Hi, and good evening, and welcome to another program of Education Matters here on Manchester Community Television on Channel 23. Um, it's February the 20th. The year is flying by, and uh, I can't believe that school vacation is coming up already in just a week. So. Um, we're heading into a busy time of the year. There's a lot going on in terms of the redistricting proposal, which now has become a realignment of grades proposal, and there are a bunch of meetings coming up and more information falling on that topic. So it's going to be an interesting time. Frankly, while all of that is going on. I think we should not lose sight of the fact that we're in the budget season, and so we should be seeing a budget from the new Mayor Craig shortly, and I'll be very interested to see that where that may be. It looks very difficult, as it is every year. It looks very difficult this year, and so we'll see what's going to happen in terms of whatever promises were made and promises that need to be kept. The teachers' union, I know that teachers are going to their contracts up for renewal. I haven't seen anything yet with regard to that. Hopefully, we'll hear something soon. I did talk to the leadership of the union back about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, and invited them to come on here. So perhaps we'll hear from them in the coming week or two. Also, I have to tell you that we'll have Dr. Vargas. Will be here with us not next week but the following week, the week after vacation. So that's Tuesday, March the 6th. And we'll be talking about his plans around redistricting and the impact on the city and what he has proposed, etc. So I'm looking forward to that. And ultimately, the whole budget issue is going to be interesting. It's going to be very difficult, I think, when you look at the proposal that Dr. Vargas has made. It's going to require some spending to be made in order to make this realignment happen. And I think it's important for people to realise also that, you can't make change. Change can't be made for free. So what you can do is make a change and expect it to pay off over time. So those figures are out or coming out about some of the impacts of these changes, but besides the focus is where it should be in the first case about what is the best for academic outcomes for our kids and what's going to make education better in Manchester and what's going to set us up for success out over time. That should be the first consideration. But then, the realities of the budget will be, are we doing things to make education more cost effective in Manchester or not? From what I saw of that initial redistricting, it seems to me that that there are cost efficiencies to be had, but they have to be teased out and proved out as well. I'd like to. I got a message from somebody just before the show started today about sums of money that were being allocated from the state of New Hampshire for security at our schools, and I'm reading it here as I'm getting it, but it seems that. Monies were being donated to the various to our various high schools for security, and when I look down through the list here, I'm just trying to see if it's broken out by. I see all the schools, but I'm not sure. Concord High School, whether it's alphabetical. We'll say we have a call coming in. By the way, the call-in number is 640-3091. Let me take this caller. Good afternoon, caller. Go ahead.
Hello. This is Bob speaking.
Hi, Bob.
Concerning the school budget,
yeah,
a lot of it depends on two things: salaries and wages,
right,
and benefits.
Right.
Now, what happens with that is If they increase, then the budget is going to be increasing. And like I said, it's salaries and benefits.
Yeah.
And I want to know what you think about that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Yeah, so the first thing is that it isn't always about salaries and benefits. Last year, if you recall, the budget was 165 as proposed by Mayor Gatzis, and then there was an additional $2 million, which was sought by the superintendent to make a certain number of changes. And in this case, it was to add 4 people into the health line, so there would be health teacher each of the 4 schools. It was to add 7, 8, or 9 teachers at the elementary level in order to reduce class sizes at the elementary level. There were teachers eliminated on the high school side. We did have a net loss of teachers in Manchester last year due to not rehiring people who were retiring out or moving out of the district. But just the point is there was $2 million put in the budget additionally last year for specific programs which were in addition to things that had happened the year before. But the other thing, Bob, is that I haven't gotten into sort of budget mode yet, sort of with the discrete numbers. But generally speaking, in the district or in any school district, salaries and benefits and etc. Are something close to 80%. Whatever, there might be 75, but order of magnitude, it's the majority of the expenditures in the school system go towards salaries and benefits, and so any increase in terms of salaries and benefits was going to have a major impact on the budget. A 1% increase is as good as a straight line 1%. And but when you think about that, there's nothing untoward or illogical about that, right? I mean, the majority, when you go into any school, if you take a school and you look at the cost basis of any school, if you were running it as a business, and I hate these analogies, but if you look at it, where would you think most of the cost would be? Well, you have to heat it, you have to snowplow the yard. You have to buy the initial building and amortize that over time. All our buildings, or most of them, are the youngest of them is 30 years old. So hopefully we're not carrying any of the costs from those. But the majority of when you look into a building, it's a building with lots of rooms in it, and with an adult at the top of each room sitting or standing talking to kids. So if you're not spending money on salaries and the associated benefits with those salaries, that's where the money goes. And also today, in terms of books and support equipment and things, yes, there are needs for textbooks, etc. But it's a very small expense, and it's a one-time expenditure as a percentage of the whole thing. And while Manchester certainly needs new books, and there are numbers carried in the superintendent's proposal, he carries a number for additional math books for, I think, middle schools. It's in his proposal. You can see it online at www.mansd.org. But yeah, I don't know how to respond to your point other than, Bob, I worry that how do we manage once again with a 1.6% increase allowed under the tax cap when things go up in price, and teachers have to live, and they have to live in the real world, and whatever inflation is and whatever the costs associated with their having to live is they have to meet. The sort of the elephant in the room thing is the healthcare benefit. Healthcare continues to be a challenge across the economy. It's healthcare costs now in the United States, which is completely out of whack with other Western democracies, but 18% of GDP is now tied up in healthcare. So it's and the rate of increase, while the rate of increase has slowed, the kind of the percentage increases we were seeing in healthcare through the 90s into the early 2000s has that rate of increase has slowed, but it's still increasing at a rate higher than inflation. And so I don't know what the numbers will be from the healthcare provider for the city's employees, and in particular the teachers, what the increase from Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield will be this year. But it could be 10%. And if it is 10%, then the question becomes, rather than fighting with each other, what do you do about that? And when that then is repeated year over year over year, and if, how do you solve that problem? What I, simply sort of shouting at the other side, which might be, well, teachers are just going to have to pay more and all that. Well, that's fine. I don't, wherever it falls out. I think teachers tomorrow, if you doubled their salary, they'd be happy to, give up the healthcare. Or whatever, wherever the math comes out. When I look at the whole package for a teacher, I look at the package for a teacher, including their benefits package, and whether you cut one piece or the other. If you're cutting, or you're increasing. And in this case, there is an increase in terms of healthcare costs. So it's a difficult problem. It's a national problem to do something to control our healthcare costs, and there's. So that's sort of beyond the scope of the City of Manchester. It's one of the many things that structurally in the City of Manchester that the city can't really control. The other one being, of course, the retirement packages, the state retirement packages that the state has so unkindly and I think unethically passed down to the city. Because when you look at that pass down that's been going on since the O'Brien administration in Concord, a deal was made by the state when the state retirement system was set up. Manchester doesn't have a vote in that. Manchester doesn't have a voice, and so when you pass down costs back down to Manchester, Manchester didn't set it up in the first place, didn't make the agreements in the first place, but now is being stuck with the consequences. And of course, it's totally unfair. It would be very unfair to say to a set of employees who worked for 50 years in the district and who've been retired for 5 years that, oh, by the way, even though you paid into the system and we did a deal and we agreed to pay you, we could have paid you this amount. We paid you 10% less than that amount because we promised you a decent retirement at the end of it. It's not a simple thing when people make decisions to go into teaching or to go into law enforcement or to become a fireman or woman or whatever other the career they take the whole bargain, not just part of it. And when people go in the military, they know they go in, they do 4 years, they get this, they do 21 years, they get that. They're out on a full pension, etc. And you can't go back retrospectively and say, oh, you did your 21 years, but we want to change the deal now. We're not really going to pay you your full benefits because we can't afford it any longer. Well, then we must have been lying to you when we started. So the same is true of the pension benefits. It's a difficult topic. Because promises were made, and they weren't outlandish promises. They were promises that people expect to be kept. And if you're a person in there, let's just say, if you're in your 70s and you're a retired teacher in Manchester and you gave of yourself for your career, while others were down in Boston earning big bucks with their PhD, doing, working in Cambridge, developing a company, and some other guy was working in a hospital, and one of your other friends was in the fire department in Nashua, and you decided to give your life as a teacher to one of the schools in Manchester. And you did that, and you had a deal. And it's the way life is. Going back to those people and saying that, thank you very much, we're now going to, because you don't have as strong a voice as others in this argument, we're going to take it from you, would be very unfair. And so I think the whole pass down of costs from the state down to the local city is immoral and unjust. I don't know how else to respond to your question other than I think implied in your question is, what are we going to do? They're going to spend the money on benefits and salaries. And my answer would be, yeah, they probably are. And that's where they need to spend it. That's they need to spend it in terms of lots of other things too, but proportionately 80% or so of any increase is going to end up being driven on the in terms of wages and salaries. And also just from I let the union people argue for themselves, but teachers in Manchester, the starting salary for a teacher is $35,000, and or so, and then over time, if you stay in the district 14 years, over 14 years you get steps until eventually, if you have a master's degree and you've been working in the district into your 15th year, you end up at, I think the highest salary in the city is 77,000 now, or 75 or 77,000. There's a lot of digesting in these numbers. So many teachers, the vast majority of teachers don't reach that number. I think the average salary for a teacher in Manchester is somewhere in the mid-50s. And the reason for that, though, is mostly because of the length of time that most of our teachers have been in their positions. We've been eliminating positions and not rehiring people over time. It's been a long time since when we got rid of all those teachers back 5 or 6 years ago. We've never really replaced those, so our teaching population is a little older than it might otherwise be. And so therefore, if you look at salary averages, our averages are lower than they might be. If we went out this year and we hired 20 new teachers and brought them in at the $35,000 first step level, then our how nice that would be compared to what it costs for teachers who've been around a long time. So I don't know how else to respond, Bob. It's going to be very difficult. We'll see where things come in. So back to this piece. So it was a highlight for me that there's this that all the schools in the district. So according to it says the General Court is. The Governor and New Hampshire Legislature amended RSA 198 by inserting a new subdivision titled Public School Infrastructure Fund and Public School Infrastructure Commissioner through Chapter 156 Laws of 2017. So the purpose was to provide funding for infrastructure projects for public elementary and secondary schools. The following are the projects allowed under the law. So then there's the various projects, what they might be, the different kinds of projects. But the actual money, the status of public school infrastructure proposals, and what I'm challenged with here is finding they're listed down by school, but like Hooksett Memorial is getting $32,000 for a security system. Who had New Boston Central School compliant telephone system. So it looks like these are around the security issues. Boscawen, Kearsarge. Let's see what else we got. Concord High School. Concord High School surveillance development, $283,000. Concord High School access control and security alerting grant, $471,000. Mountain View, which is in Goffstown, they're getting an MVMS alarm system upgrades for $6,000. Woodland Winnicott Cooperative High School, security camera upgrade, $264,000. Laconia, New Hampton. Let's see if we can get down to Manchester here soon. Conway, Canterbury, Belmont, Timberlane. Yeah, what's Timberlane's got main entry security system improvements at $13,600. I'm sorry, folks. I'm trying to do this here in real time. William Elementary, Bartlett, Newmarket, Memorial Elementary. So I thought we had Memorial High School. McKelvey Intermediate School in Bedford, $19,000 for security improvements. Bedford High School, $19,000 security improvements. Lergio, Bedford, $19,000 for security improvements. Goffstown High School, $47,000 for digital video equipment. Let's say goodbye to that. It says scam likely, so it probably is. Gonick, Maple Avenue, district-wide, Bluff, Claremont. Oh, there's a lot of schools on here. All of SAU 16. Seabrook. Memorial High School. Memorial High School security cameras, 38,186. McLaughlin Middle School, 23,662. Oh yeah, Memorial High School school door locking upgrades for Memorial High School, $45,600. So Parkside Middle School access control, $4,100. Southside Middle School CCTV and access control, $27,000. West High School school door locking upgrades, $52,000. And then we go on from there. So rather than trying to reach down through the rest of these here, so it's a list of grants that are being funded out of for security and access control cards and camera systems. And the question that the caller had for me was, he thought that this stuff had been funded earlier by the schools. Let me grab a call here. Go ahead, caller.
There were green navigators and long netties.
Thank you.
The backburners and some chimpanzees.
All right, we have a friend on that line. Let me see. Oh, I was going to the other line to get somebody. All right. So our singer. Thank you, singer, for a moment of jollity. It's always appreciated. So the point in our for what I got just as this program was starting was that there's a series of grants being issued to the Manchester School District for security upgrades in light of the Parkland incident. Of course, that's particularly important. But the question was, since we were doing Columbine locks, etc., and that was supposed to have been done recently in our schools, then what was this? The question was, what was this additional funding going to be used for, and could it be used for something else? On another topic, I talked to a gentleman again today, who reminded me of the issue that. How we're desperately trying to seek money for our schools, and he said to me, he had a wonderful way of putting it. He said that he felt like going before the school board and saying, I found this bag of money for the schools that I think you're going to be able to use. And the problem is, I don't really know how much is in the bag of money, because nobody will tell us how much is in the bag of money. But I'm sure it could be used, to hire some paraprofessionals to do something about our special needs programs, to hire some teachers to lower class sizes, etc., etc. And the mystery bag he was talking about is the healthcare benefits for the school board. And this is a topic that I was not paying any attention to this in the past, because I thought, it's a health benefit for the school board, and it's part of their deal. Why are we sort of rocking that boat? And I changed my mind. People spoke to me, and I it's an area that I find it very difficult now to justify, and I think it's unjustifiable for people to be getting health benefits. And whatever the amount of money is. The problem is, in the little bag that we're talking about, nobody knows exactly how much it is, because it's based on, Manchester insures itself. So to say that we have, let's say 8 of 14 school board members, whatever the number is, taking the healthcare coverage, the only number you can get is that, the price per person spread out over the whole population, it's worth $5,700 each, or $2,000 per month each, so it's $20,000 for each person. Therefore, $20,000 per person by 8 people, it's a $160,000 benefit. But no, it's not, ladies and gentlemen, because if one of those people, just one of them, has I talked to a gentleman today who had a heart problem, and for a 40-minute procedure, having his arteries unblocked, for want of a technical term, because I don't know what the right term for that is, but it was a $60,000 bill. So if one of our school board members, or their husband or wife, or their children, or any of their dependents in their household, if any of them has a serious accident, has a serious illness or a serious disease, requires, a heart transplant or something, it could be $1 million. But actually, to be truthful, in the city of Manchester, the way it works is we're self-insured. So the city doesn't pay insurance to somebody else. We have an insurance company that manages the process for us, just so that we're not, as a city, dealing directly with hospitals. But just so you understand how it works, the the city insures itself, so it pays the costs. If a public employee, buys, cholesterol medicine 5 times a year and it's $20 each time, then that's $100 that the city actually pays. So it pays the real cost. What the city does have is it has like a backup system, which like catastrophic loss system or stop loss policy, which means that for any one individual or for any one loss, when it goes above any loss above $250,000, that's what our insurance covers. But we could easily, we don't know what's in the bag, but the bag could easily be $1 million a year worth of health coverage. It could be. We just don't know. And nobody else knows either because, well, the ones who know won't share it. So we have 2 or 3 people who are significantly unwell, and they're into it for $200,000 each or something, and then easy you can get into real money. And when you juxtapose that with the fact that we don't have services, we can't afford to pay. Our per diem rates are terrible. We pay sub-teachers the same as what they'd get paid to go to McDonald's, to work in McDonald's. Actually, they can get paid less than what they pay at McDonald's nowadays, and about the same as what they get paid at Dunkin' Donuts. So that's what we pay people to go in our schools. And then paraprofessionals, people who are in there working one-on-one with kids with significant issues, or 1 to 3 or 1 to 2, with kids with special needs, etc. First of all, we can't get them because our salaries are too low. It's just a simple. After all the years of people shouting at us, that if it was that good, they wouldn't, if it was that bad, they'd go and get jobs someplace else. I remember having a discussion with Joe Kelly Levasseur 3 years ago on his show when he talked about, we have thousands of people applying for jobs and nobody. If that was a problem, that wouldn't be happening. And I pointed out at the time that we had recs in Manchester that were a year old and we couldn't get people to respond to them. So you can say anything you want, but the facts and the truth are something different. So we found ourselves in the city of Manchester where we have positions that we can't fulfill. Now, to the healthcare issue, if we have members of our boards, school boards, and Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and I know many of these people, I know most of these people, and they may be nice and well-intentioned and all the rest of it. But let's be clear, there are many people on our school boards who are significantly better off than the average person in the city of Manchester. Many of them. And the fact that people who are already quite wealthy, who are significant business owners or have significant properties or whatever else that they might have, to have people, then accepting the free healthcare on behalf of the city. I understand why they do it. It's not a mystery to me. And a few years ago, I might, if I were to serve on one of those boards, I might have said, well, it's a benefit. I'll take this benefit. I come to meetings and I try my best and I work on behalf of the people and I put in a lot of hours every week. Why shouldn't I get it? And that's kind of where I came at it. But what was forced in front of me was the idea that there are children in our city who don't have a teacher where they ought to have a teacher. Because the city can't afford to hire them, and that kids are being lost out of the system, or kids are not doing as well as they should, or kids are failing and not getting an opportunity to succeed, or sometimes not just not having an opportunity to be happy at school and to have a good experience, and the reason for that is that some people who could, in any other circumstance, well afford it, are deciding to take money that otherwise would hire a teacher and accept it for healthcare purposes. So I think if there's a school board member who's got healthcare services in any year that's the average teacher package complete with healthcare is about $50,000 per teacher for any new teacher coming in, so 35 plus the rest of the package. I think it's unconscionable that we have school board members accepting health care, and they may be, by doing it, they may be taking a teacher, and when you add them all together, they may be taking 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teachers away from the city of Manchester, and that's what I find unconscionable. And I thank the gentleman for pointing that out to me again today, because it's become more and more obvious to me that when you look at it in those views, that you're sort of taking food from the mouths of babes and giving it to people who could afford, if they really had to. There's no reason why they couldn't afford their own health care. They're taking it as a benefit because it's there, but it's actually got a real cost, and a cost greater than that which is often represented to us. The actual cost is a mystery. It's kept a mystery, and we're not allowed to find out. I'd like the mystery to go away. Let me just say, with regard to the Manchester School District website has got a bunch of information on it right now because of the redistricting issue and what Dr. Vargas is proposing. There is a let me see this. Yeah, so that's gone already. There are community forums starting on redistricting, and the first one is tomorrow night. From 6 to 7 p.m. It'll be at Middle School at Parkside, on the west side of the city, up behind CMC. That's on from 6 to 7 p.m. tomorrow, February the 21st. And it's an opportunity to... it says members of the community are invited to ask questions and make comments on Manchester School District Superintendent Dr. Vargas' draft proposal for the next phases of redistricting. All parents, guardians, etc., employees and students or interested community members are welcome to attend. There are going to be 9 sessions. So the first one is on February 21st. And then there's a gap because the following week is school vacation. And the next one after that will be on March 7th, which is a Wednesday night again. March 7th, first of all, at 7:30 in the morning at Webster Elementary School, followed that afternoon, March 7th, from 6 to 7 p.m. at Northwest Elementary School. Now, on that weekend of March, that March 7th is the Wednesday, on Tuesday, March 6th, God willing, Dr. Vargas will be here and will be discussing the school redistricting program as proposed, and we'll be accepting your calls. So if you can't make it to the forum and you would like to ask questions, please call us here on Tuesday, March 6th from 6 to 7 p.m. 7:30 a.m. at Webster on the 7th of March, and then that evening at Northwest Elementary at 6 to 7 p.m. The following day on March 8th, it's at 4:30 at McLaughlin, and then you can go down through the rest. Is at Beach Street on March 14th, at Memorial on March 15th, Hillside on March 20th, Wilson Elementary on March 22nd, and finishing at Parker Varney on March 28th. So there's lots of opportunity for people to jump in on the redistricting program. If you haven't seen it, the slide set is available on the website. We went through it here in this show last week. I would ask people to please give this proposal room to breathe. I think it's a very serious proposal. I think it's an excellent proposal. We've yet to see how it all, like there's finer points have to be hammered out, but I think it gives the City of Manchester an opportunity to set itself up for the future. The idea of having the pressure of space alleviated at all our elementary schools by they going to up to 4th grade, and then it's a simple move putting 5th grade into the middle schools. The space is there, they're equipped to do it, and so that alleviates the pressure on the elementary schools. And then the way in which the high schools are going to be reconfigured is less clear. It's on there. It's less clear what the exact outcome might be in the long term, but it's a very rational system. It also allows for the creation of an all-day kindergarten program, and so this sort of holistically, I think it's a good program. Secondly, on the west side, the idea of having Goslar Park, Northwest, and Parker Varney, those 3 elementary schools, first of all, that the system that's been tried and proven successful under former principal Amy Lynn at Parker Varney. This is the what I used to think of as the Montessori method. It's not fully that, but it's multiple grade, kids of multiple grade working together. So you might have a first, a second grader working together and something, or being in the same class for certain things, and second and third graders, etc. But that model has been worked, sort of multi-teacher, multi-kids, has worked at Parker Varney. The idea is to implement that solution at the other two grade schools, elementary schools on the west side. The kids coming out of that system, which will now be sort of one system, so everybody will be equal in terms of the education that they get, the resources that they'll have, etc. That will feed into Parkside, which is a wonderful middle school with a great principal who's a very smart guy, very well organized, very modern in his thinking. They're using, Forrest Rendell is a man I like and admire, and I know that his use of sort of Google macros and things means that he's sort of implementing education as it should be, and getting away from shuffling pieces of paper, etc. And then so the idea for the west side is to buy into this idea that you're going to have a robust school system, bringing kids, raising academic standards, making them schools that people will desire to get into a dynamic middle school at Parkside, and then feeding into West High School, which with its various programs, the idea is to use public-private partnerships. For instance, there's been a lot of talk about the proximity for CMC, Catholic Medical Centre, for kids who are interested in medicine, etc. And you've got the excellent Mr. Deschard over there as the principal. I think that Dr. Vargas is right to be excited about how you can create a school system in micro on the west side of the city that is well resourced and well managed, and that people will be excited about, because it'll be produced. In the end, they'll be excited about it because there'll be smaller class sizes. The schools will have state-of-the-art models of education, and the kids will grow together in one seamless program. That there'll be this vertical integration from elementary school to middle school and up into high school. A topic that I've talked with some members of the school board about, a couple of them recently as well, about how we integrate kids as they move up through these models, up through these grades. I think it has the potential to be a wonderful system, and it will maximise the benefit of that which we have there already. So I'm excited about that. I think that there may be pushback a little bit on this issue of having fifth graders in the middle schools, but I trust our middle school superintendents to do this the right way, because as it stands today, even, ladies and gentlemen, the sixth graders, as sixth graders progress into our middle schools today, the sixth graders are largely separate from the seventh and eighth graders. Not completely, but largely. So they're in separate areas of the building. They use the cafeteria at separate times. They do other programs at separate times. And there's very few places where you have seventh and eighth graders in direct contact with sixth graders. At assemblies, when there's a whole school assemblies, you'll find the sixth graders are corralled in one area with their set of teachers, and the seventh and eighth graders are distributed in the gymnasiums differently as well. So I think that's something that can be managed. And in the end, kids are not monolithic, or it's not as though all sixth graders are the same, that all fifth graders are the same, right? There are some sixth graders who are mature enough to be eighth or ninth graders. There are some sixth graders who are immature enough to be fourth graders. So, it's at any stage, it's a broad brush thing. But that if that model working, and then room to grow for the first time in our elementary schools, where we'll be able to have, instead of having art on a cart and music on a cart, but we can have art and music and other programs with their own space, and hopefully the teachers there to do it. I think it could be an exciting time for the city of Manchester. I think there will be some small incremental cost. You can't move just like you can't to move house. If you buy a house that's less expensive or is more efficient in terms of heating or cooling or closer to work or whatever else. When you move the house from the house you live in to the new house, there's a cost in moving. Now the costs are laid out. The first set of costs are laid out in this document. So we're not talking about an awful lot of money. But in the Manchester School District, a couple of $1 million is an awful lot of money. As a percentage of the total, given that we have a $167 million school budget, so 1% is $1.6 million. So when Dr. Vargas talks about spending an additional $1.5 million to implement this solution, we're talking about 1% of the budget. But that happens to be the total increase we have for the year. So it's going to be a challenge to see how we get there. So again, tomorrow at Parkside from 6 to 7 p.m. there's the first of the what's being called redistricting forums. I think there's another word for it rather than I think it's a reconfiguration of our schools. But I'm very excited about it. I'm very supportive of it, and I'm very grateful for Dr. Vargas for stepping into this void and offering what seems to me a smart and realistic solution. So let me see. Another issue I just wanted to bring up was that next week is school vacation week in the city of Manchester, and I was out today. I was watching kids on the ice today over at Stevens Pond, and that was completely covered in ice just a few days ago, and there's open water there today. So I hope people, every February vacation, I get the shudders. There's always some horrible news that happens, and so I would hope that people would play safe. The Office of Youth Services in the city of Manchester, every year there's a Winterfest that most people, if you're jetting off to Florida for a week with your kids, you probably aren't aware of this and don't need to be. But if your kids are going to be hanging around in Manchester for the week, it's worth. You can get you can go to the Office of Youth Services, OYS, on the city's website, but you can or to the libraries. The information is at either of the two main libraries. The West Side Library or the main library, but it's also on the MANSD .org website, and so just like the list of stuff here that's available for kids. Some of it is cheap, or some of it is free. So the Courier Museum of Art, for instance, the Manchester Historic Association at the Mill Yard, the City Library, the West Branch, they're all offering children, youth, and families dozens of opportunity to exercise their creativity during Winterfest 2018, which is the school week. So at the Courier, activities begin on Monday the 26th. It's an event geared to ages 3 through 5, reading Duck for President, creating campaign signs, etc. So there's art and reading going on there. Wednesday, Thursday, and Fridays, family activities include creative studio and build your own sculpture park, etc., etc. So that's the Courier Gallery. The Milliard Museum is open Saturday the 24th through Saturday the 3rd. Admission for adults is $8, but children up to 18 are free. And there's a whole load of programming going on there. The main city library on Pine Street and the West Branch Library on North Main Street on the west side have multiple activities every Monday through Friday. Meteorologist Josh Judge from WMUR will be presenting his book. Be Nice to the Weather Guy is the name of his book, and he'll be presenting it and talking about it. There'll be arts and crafts, Lego, play, minion party, dancing, movies, blah, blah, blah. And then let's see, reading out loud to Hazel, dog visitors to the library. There's just a whole, so all library events are free of charge, but some do require reservations. Favorite camp returns to Winterfest. So the Massabesic Audubon Centre, they bring the Audubon's February Fun Nature Camp to Winterfest 18. It starts on the 26th of February and runs to March 2nd for children ages 6 through 12. That's another. It's the sports during Winterfest. Children, youth, and families can skate, swim, play basketball, or enter a foul shooting contest and practice climbing. Vertical Dreams is offering special weekend and vacation hours during this period. Manchester Parks and Rec offers a free throw contest for boys and girls grades 3 through 8 at the Beach Street School on Friday, March the 2nd, and on the 3rd, it looks like, and a 3 and 3 community. Also at the school for the 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th graders on February 27 and 28 and March 1st. JFK Coliseum will be open to the public skating on the weekends from February 26th to March 2nd, 2 to 4 p.m. $5 for adults, $3 for kids. How can you beat that deal? And then the pool at Southern New Hampshire University is open for free swims from 10:30 a.m. to noon, Monday through Friday. Passes for swimmers will be distributed from the Office of Youth Services the day before the swim. Friday, February 23rd for Monday to February 26th. So maybe that's something fun you could do with your kids is go over to SNU for a free swim at 10:30 during the week next week. And given the temperature tomorrow, we're talking about 70 degrees, it's 65 degrees or something today, then maybe that's something worth looking at. The other issue, I'm just going through the things I'd highlighted here before we started. There's a bunch of coaching positions available in the school district where they're looking for coaches. The Central High School boys and girls track and field needs a coach or coaches. Central High School girls tennis team needs a coach. There's a one. These are paid positions too, by the way. It's a small stipend, but it's just for a few weeks in the springtime. And what a fun thing to do if you play tennis. Coaching these high school kids, they can't do it without a coach. I'd encourage people listening to this, why not step up to the plate and help out some of these kids. There's some great kids out there, and you can help them on their way. And then there's an assistant coach for West High School boys track and field. So I don't know what other coaching positions are available, but those are. And then connected with that, the city has appointed on February 1st a new athletic director, and it's Christine Parazo-Telge, Director of Athletics for the district. Sadly, Ms. Telge is there in a part-time role, but I've talked to some people who know her, who say that she's a wonderful person and is extremely well qualified for the job, and so I trust that that's true, and I wish her all the best. It's a very tough job. It's not a half-time job, and up until last year it was a full-time job in the district, and it was reduced down to half-time last year. There's way too much for a director of athletics to be doing in a city with 14,000 students in it, in a city the size of Manchester, just to manage the existing programs. People think about just managing coaches and organising buses and referees, but dealing with disputes and dealing with transport and fields and making sure the fields are maintained properly, coordinating with Parks and Rec, organising, gym time at all the various gyms, coordinating with tournaments that go on and championships and etc. going on, not just through NHIAA at the state level, but in other organisations. Everything from, alpine skiing to crew. You might have kids. I know the kids in crew at Central. They row at the Head of the Charles every year. So there are kids competing in competitions in various places at any given time. So for one person to try to manage all of this it's undoable. It's really a department it's more than even one person. But I wish her all the best. I hope that she's not overwhelmed. And perhaps an argument can be made in the future to the people of the city of Manchester to put back a full-time sports coordinator. I mean, we don't have a special. We don't have an arts. We used to have an arts director for the city as well, arts and music, and that person was eliminated now years ago. The last one I think was now Dr. Chris Martin, but that's many moons ago, and so there's nobody running those programs. You look at the wonderful program at West High School for their theatre program, which is the theatre program for the city of Manchester. You've got groups like Maskers at Central and at Memorial High School who put on their own shows and things, but they do it each, just individual teachers making stuff happen. There's no citywide coordination of that. So again, I wish Miss Telge is a lifelong resident of Manchester and a product of the city's schools. She says here that her love for the student athletes and the city of Manchester will drive her to strengthen our programs and represent our community the best way possible. Well said and well done. She currently works as program coordinator for Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Centre's Friends of Norris Cotton Cancer Centre, and she'll continue in that position. She holds a law degree and has experience working in human resources. What a wonderful person, and such a highly qualified person to have in sports in the city. I want to say something about the events in Florida last week, and it's just beyond words, and I don't think that I have the words to express. Sending sympathy and prayers, which everybody does. I worry about this being a moment in time, and then we just moving on to the next thing. The breathless reporting of maybe well-intentioned and shocked reporters who arrive down there in droves, fly into the local airport, park their trucks up and down the street for miles after mile after mile, and then they, not to be overly cynical, but then they move on to the next tragedy. It is unconscionable that young people can't go to school in the United States of America without being in fear of being shot or of a mass shooting. I'm firmly of the belief that the cure should not be worse than the problem. In the end, 150,000, which is an awful figure, but over 20 years, 150,000 kids have been affected by mass shootings. That doesn't mean they've been shot themselves or killed, but 150,000 have been affected, and that's a terrible number, and it's something that as a country we should be doing something about. I'd hate to see our schools. First of all, I worry about sort of the military-industrial complex kind of problem, that private vendors who sell X-ray equipment, metal detectors, barbed wire, camera systems, card access control systems, etc., will have a field day, sucking at the trough of federal spending on throwing lots of money at this problem because we won't deal with the issue, which in my view is a gun control issue. We know that if you what has been done in other countries, when Australia, after they had a mass shooting, they took action on gun control, and they haven't had the problem in 20 years. And in Britain, England had the Dunblane shooting at a grade school, or at a school in England, where 20 kids or so were killed. They implemented gun control policies, and they haven't had another mass shooting in the 18 years or 19 years since. So I don't know what the solution for America is, but to simply say that the problem has nothing to do with guns. And oh, by the way, I particularly detest and dislike the dishonesty around mental health. 4% of people involved in mass shootings have some sort of classic mental health issue. So the idea that people are that this is a mental health problem, I think you have to be crazy to do what these people do, but obviously some people get crazy from time to time. This is not to malign the people who suffer from mental health in this country and say, because you're unwilling to deal with the real problem, which is how do you keep guns out of bad actors' hands and allow people, you produce a toy in the United States, and if it's got little pieces in it that are too small that might choke a child, they're not allowed to sell it. It's banned. So there's all kinds of toys every year that are banned because they have a sharp edge and they might cut a finger. There are baby products that can't be used because they're choking hazards. There are, children aren't allowed in a car without a car seat. In every state except for the state of New Hampshire, you have to wear a seatbelt. There's all kinds of, and as a result, there's been after implementing those solutions, there have been resultant benefits that are demonstrable. Let's say when a state introduces seatbelt laws, the number of deaths per accident and the number of accidents decrease. So clearly, there's a cause and effect there. So to put this, I worry about putting this on the back of an already in the state of New Hampshire woefully underfunded mental health service. The services that I have a friend who was a staunch Republican, who as soon as he was faced with a problem in his family of mental health, couldn't believe the lack of resources that were available to him to deal with his family's issue. He had come originally from Massachusetts, and he just presumed that what happened in Massachusetts happened in New Hampshire as well. Well, New Hampshire is noted for the fact of how bad its mental health services are. So putting this on the backs of people who already are ostracized because of this insidious disease, mental health disease. You see somebody with a broken leg or a missing limb, as somebody who's a wounded warrior, so to speak. People, including military veterans who suffer from mental health issues, we shouldn't be conflating a guns for all. Anybody can buy one, you can get one anywhere, buy it on the internet with no background checks. Any lunatic. This guy bought 7 guns, what people call assault weapons. It just makes no sense whatsoever. So I worry about that. But I hope that we can find a solution in the United States that doesn't involve what I would call barbed wiring our schools. I don't want to see our kids having to go through metal detectors and taking off their backpacks to have them go through X-ray machines and going through turnstiles, and it just is a price too high. I think that we should face up to the problem and meet the problem as it exists, and it's very simple. Guns are too easily available to too many people who shouldn't have them in the United States. If you have to do a driver's ed to drive a car, I don't understand the rationale why you wouldn't have to do not just a background check, but you have to demonstrate the ability to responsibly manage a gun. We have adults up in the State House of New Hampshire on at least 2 occasions who have dropped loaded firearms onto the floor of a committee meeting or onto the floor of the House. These are adults, gun proponents, who like to walk around our State House with their guns like Annie Oakley strapped to their chests. So the idea that we can't have sensible, while fully allowing hunters and enthusiasts and people who have a real interest in guns and or a real need for guns to so that upright citizens have the access that they deserve and that they need. But having this free for all where you can't buy so many things because you have to be older or you have to be licensed or whatever, but when it comes to the most deadly piece of equipment of all, you can get it any way you want. It just doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't want to see our society change more than it has already in response to this. Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the end of this program. I thank you for your time tonight. We were a little scattergraphic tonight, covering multiple different issues. I thank those who called in, including our singer. I hope the drinking's going well, and we'll see you all next Tuesday night. Thank you and all the best. Bye bye.